I'm somewhere in the middle, try to find myself again.
Hey guys, welcome back to episode 3 of the podcast. Today is a different episode than the previous two, and I've kind of just been doing a lot of research into this case, and I thought, why not do a podcast episode on it so you guys can let me know if this is something you're interested in, if this is something I should continue doing on the podcast or not. You can let me know. I'll also look at the engagement and things. But yes, so I basically get majority of my news stories from TikTok, and I will say that my TikTok feed has literally just been the Taylor Swift concert recently. But every now and again, I kind of get these videos about what's going on in South African news at the moment. And you guys will probably know that Thabo Bester, the Facebook rapist, has just been like all over the news lately. And I knew nothing of this case. I had no idea who he was, nothing like that. So I kind of just ignored it for a while, and then it just became insane. There was like new claims coming out every single day. Fingers were being pointed, the government was being scolded. It was crazy. And so I decided to actually just sit down and figure out what the hell is going on with this story. And I basically decided, hey, why not do a podcast episode on it? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people wondering the same thing as me. So that's what this podcast episode is. I will warn you that there are discussions of rape and murder, so do proceed with caution. I don't go into a lot of detail because I feel like going into some of the details, it's just gonna give like a shock factor, which I'm not trying to do with this podcast. I'm just here to deliver you guys the facts and the story. I'm not trying to shock you in any way. So the word rape and murder will be mentioned, but I promise you no details will be kind of gone into or revealed. So I just wanted to say that as a trigger warning. But yeah, I think the name also kind of gives it away. There is someone mowing their lawn at 1:45, and I'm just wondering why. I'm praying that you guys cannot hear it, but I can hear it. So I'm living in fear that once I listen back to this audio, I'm going to be hearing my neighbor mowing his grass. So starting off, there's a lot being reported in the media at the moment, and trying to get information about his crimes, which basically started in 2009, is a bit hard because I feel like at the time it wasn't really reported on as much as it's being reported on now. There's a lot of conflicting claims, a lot of conflicting storylines or timelines. So I tried my best to get the most accurate information, but I can't guarantee anything. I was literally just using internet sources. I will list the sources that I used. I basically just read a bunch of things and then compiled a timeline of events. So yes, this story is also not really victim focused, which when I consume true crime content, I do prefer it to be more victim focused than offender focused. But when I did research, all of his rape victims were kind of anonymous or unidentified, and I do believe it's because they don't want to reveal their identity, which I will respect. So yes, this is not a victim focused account. I will mention that. So buckle up. This is the craziest story I've heard in a very long time. I'm talking rape, I'm talking murder, I'm talking fraud, I'm talking corruption, I'm talking a grand escape. So we're going to kick it off with his early life. I will say that everything we know of his early life is claims that he has made. So this is all coming from his mouth, which we don't know how trustworthy this information is because it's coming from this psychopath, which you guys will find out is a piece of shit, essentially. So he claims that he was abandoned by his parents and raised by his alcoholic grandmother on a farm in Gauteng. So he says that he was raped by a man his grandmother sent him to get circumcised. However, instead of performing the operation, the man instead raped him. Now, I don't know how circumcision works or how these operations work, but it seems wild to me that you can just send your child off somewhere to get circumcised. But like I said, there's no like proof or anything contradicting this, so we don't know how true this is, but it might be happening and it's crazy. So he claimed that at the age of 10, he was also raped by one of his grandmother's friends, and this friend kept him locked in a room whilst repeatedly raping him for a week, and this ended up in him having to receive medical care for the injuries he sustained. He also claims that he was molested by various members of his grandmother's family. And at the age of 12, he was forced to drop out of school and fend for himself because his grandmother got ill and eventually died. This is when he claimed he began sleeping in squatter camps and started hanging out with runaways and orphans, stating that they had to hustle for food and do anything to get by. And I think obviously this is a reality for a lot of children, a lot of people living in South Africa, but a lot of the people in those situations, yes, they have to resort to a life of crime. I understand that, but that does not make them horrible, terrible psychopaths, which Thabo Bester completely is. So I just wanted to mention that. So, due to him having to kind of fend for himself and hustle, he was quickly introduced to the world of fraud and corruption. This started off with him cashing fraudulent checks and running errands for some men, and he was paid for doing this. However, he was eventually caught in 2009 and he was charged with fraud and he was sentenced to 6 months in prison, but he was given the option to pay a 1,500 Rand fine instead of going to prison. However, he was unable to afford this and he had to go to prison. He then claims whilst in prison he was gang raped by a group of inmates. He goes into extreme graphic detail of what happened, and I'm warning you, if you're looking into this, be warned, because it's really graphic and really disturbing. So just be warned. Like I said, I'm not going to go into it or mention it, but there's your warning. After this, he did end up opening a case of indecent assault against these inmates. However, when he reported this, so when he opened the case, he did not mention the rape. In March of 2011, he was also found guilty of fraud and he received a 2-year suspended sentence. So, my understanding of a suspended sentence is basically that you don't get sent to prison, you're basically on probation. However, if you commit any form of crime, no matter how petty or how trivial, you will be sent to prison. So, yeah. So now we're kind of getting into the whole, or how he kind of got the name of the Facebook rapist. Like I said, I kind of struggled to find dates and complete timelines, but I tried my best. So he got the name the Facebook rapist because he posted modeling jobs via adverts on reputable websites, which included Facebook. Through these adverts, he lured young women to hotels, promising them glitzy modeling jobs and telling them that international modeling scouts were interested in them and that they should meet in person. Obviously, these girls were, wanting to make some money because of the high unemployment rate. We all know this story of this country. So obviously they agreed and they went to meet him in person. So when they arrived at these hotels, they ended up getting raped and robbed at gunpoint. One of his victims had to be hospitalized for 5 days and received 13 stitches in her head due to Bester's assault. So, to prove that this man is complete scum, he ended up taunting police on Facebook, stating that they should catch him if they can. And eventually, of course, he was arrested in 2011 in Alberton, or in Joburg. So yeah, and the reason why I'm mentioning the taunts to police is because you'll see later on when he's in court, he claims that he's remorseful and he's so sorry and he shouldn't have done it, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, clearly you're not remorseful. Clearly you did this with intention, because why would you taunt police? You know what I mean? So I just wanted to mention that, because I feel like as much as this person tries to play up that, oh, like he had a troubling childhood and it made him do all these bad things, no, I just think he's a complete piece of crap and a psychopath. And his true nature is revealed through small incidences, like the fact that he taunted police on Facebook. So, like I said, he was arrested and he ended up pleading guilty. So there was no court case, and I think that's why there's a lack of what's the word? There's a lack of reporting around the rapes and the victims and the whatever, because they weren't a court case, so we don't have access to any of the information or what actually went down, because they didn't have a case, they just went straight into sentencing. I mean, they didn't have a trial, they just went straight into sentencing. However, from some of the sources I've read, they do think that there's he had more than 10 victims. Yeah. Going back to the court, he pleaded guilty to 2 counts of rape and 2 counts of armed robbery with aggravated circumstances. I swear the person mowing his lawn is getting closer. Anyways, when his sentence hearing took place, he burst into tears and essentially told the court how terrible his upbringing and life had been up to this point. He told the court that he had resorted to a life of crime to support himself, stating that you either make a plan or you die. He continued by stating that his intention was never to rape the woman, but rather that he was impelled by lust, and he only intended to rob them. I don't see how that argument helps you. I don't know who told him to make that argument in court, but that is a very poor argument to make in court, because you essentially told the court, I couldn't keep it in my pants, that's why I raped them. And if that's not a good reason to sentence you to 15 years or more, I don't understand. But anyways, the reason why I'm telling you, or the reason why he was stating all of this in court, was because he was trying to show that there were circumstances that would allow the magistrate to give him a lesser sentence than the minimum sentence for rape. So the minimum sentence for rape, I think, is 15 years. And he was telling the court about his horrible life to try and convince them to give him less than 15 years. So that's why I'm telling you about all of this. Or that's why he told the court all of this. So, yes, he then told the court that he wants a second chance to put things right. Now, I don't think you can ever put things right when it comes to rape, because you have scarred these women for the rest of their life. They will be dealing with this trauma for the rest of their life. It will affect every single minute of their daily lives. It will be with them for the rest of their life. And the amount of psychological, emotional, physical trauma, there's no going back. There's no way of fixing it. So him asking for a second chance to put things right, nope. No. Don't. Moving on. Luckily, the court also called BS. Yes, so the court said that the interest of society outweighed his personal interest, and that there was no compelling circumstances to impose a lesser sentence, and for that reason he was sentenced to 15 years for each of the 2 counts of rape, and he was also sentenced to another 15 years with 5 years suspended for each of the 2 counts of armed robbery with aggravated circumstances. So Bester then ended up asking the court to see a psychologist to make sense of the person that he is. Which, yes, I just wanted to throw it in there that he did ask to speak to a psychologist. I don't know if he ever met with a psychologist, but asking for a psychologist to make sense of the person that you are clearly shows that you have criminal intentions, you have horrible, violent intentions. You know what I mean? I don't know if any of this is making sense, but if you did all of this just because of how terrible your life had been and you were just trying to get by, you wouldn't ask for a psychologist. But clearly he also knew there was something mentally wrong with him, because he did ask to see a psychologist. Whether or not he ended up seeing one, I don't know. But yes. So Thabo Bester's lawyer is as much of a piece of shit as Bester himself, because after this sentencing, his lawyer actually spoke out and said that Bester was a victim of circumstances and that he was not to blame, but rather the world was to blame. Which, yeah. This lawyer, also a piece of shit. But he would, I don't know. I was going to say maybe he was just acting in his client's best interest, because that's what a criminal defense attorney is supposed to do. But this was after the sentencing. Saying that these victims should not blame Bester but rather blame the world is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my entire life, and it angers me to a point that I can't even keep a level head. So I'm not even gonna think about it or say too much about it. We're just gonna move on, because I feel like we all are angry at this point at this dumbass lawyer. So the magistrate in this case said that in spite of his sad life, he was at all times aware of what he was doing, and continued by saying that Bester had scarred these girls for life and that they will never be the same again. She also said that she saw no signs of genuine remorse from him, which is important because this will come up later again. So, yeah. during the time that he was doing this Facebook scam and raping these women, he also met a woman, a 26-year-old woman called Mfundo Tulu. I think that's how you pronounce it. I do apologize for my pronunciations in this podcast. I'm trying my best, but I had limited resources when it came to pronunciation. I tried my best to Google to see how you pronounce these names and things, but we all probably know Google is horrible when it comes to African languages. So, yeah, I apologize in advance. In advance. So, as I said, during this time he was running this Facebook scam, he met Mfundo, and this was in January of 2011, and they met in Joburg, and they shortly after meeting started dating. In September of that year, they flew from Durban to Cape Town for a holiday and stayed at the Milnerton bed and breakfast. So they went to bed one night, and sometime during the night, Bester woke up and made his way to the kitchen, where he got a knife. He then said that he only intended to rob her of her belongings. However, when he returned to the bedroom, she was awake, and the two ended up getting into a heated argument, and this is when Bester ended up stabbing her to death. The next morning, so not immediately after killing her, the next morning he ended up fleeing the scene with her cell phone and her laptop. She was then found by the owner of the bed and breakfast in the room with stab wounds to the chest. So he was then brought to Cape Town to face charges of murder and robbery. And at the same time, he was now serving his sentence for the rapes and the robberies in Durban, but the murder case was happening in Cape Town. Yeah. So again, he entered a plea bargain with the state, so there was no trial, and he pleaded guilty to robbery and murder. He told the court that he had no reason to kill her, and he apologized for his actions. So again, scum, just absolute scum. The judge called BS and said that even though Bester apologized, he showed no signs of remorse, which, again, you can clearly see by the actions of this man that he does not care about any human on this planet. He doesn't care about women, which obviously is a thing in South Africa. We know this by now with the gender-based violence and everything. But yeah, he again used the excuse that he only intended to rob her. He had no reason for killing her. But the judge said that this was a brutal and callous act. I want to talk about the fact that he said that he only had an intention to rob her. If you only intended to rob her, you would have woken up in the middle of the night, you would have taken her cell phone, you would have taken her laptop, and you would have walked the hell out of the door, right? Why did you go to the kitchen to get a knife? Because she was asleep. She was asleep. There was no reason for you to have a weapon. You could have actually just taken the things and left. So I'm calling BS on him saying that he didn't intend to kill her. But yeah, he ended up receiving a life sentence for the murder and 25 years for robbery, and this ran concurrently, which means at the same time. So during this trial, or at this time when he was sentenced, even though he had been found guilty in Durban of rape and robbery, he was still facing charges involving robbery and fraud in Cape Town, Joburg, and Boksburg. Like, this man was making his way, he was taking a tour of the courts in South Africa. I promise you. he was seeing every single high court there is to see in this country. So, yeah. Anyways, I'm sorry. So, this is kind of where we start to go into the events of what's currently going around in the media. So, following all of this, he was being held in the Mangahung Correctional Center, which is in Bloemfontein. And this is actually a private prison ran by a company called G4S. Now, I knew of the concept of private prisons, but I didn't know it was a thing in South Africa, which sounds very stupid because I am a law student and you probably think, oh, but you should know this. No, no. I think I knew it, but I also didn't know it. I don't know if that makes any sense. But I want to know your thoughts on the privatization of prisons, because essentially the government is giving their duties over to private companies, so the government's telling private companies, hey, please run this prison for me. And the reason why I'm saying I want to know your thoughts on this is because later on it's going to become relevant, right? So yeah, do you think the government should be able to hire private security companies to run prisons for them? But yeah, just a question. Maybe you want to tell me what you think. I'll share my opinion in a minute. So, going to May 2022, he was allegedly found dead in his cell. So the guards found his deceased body at 3:35 in the morning, and he had essentially set himself on fire. However, when they did a DNA test on the burnt body, the police found no match to Bester's DNA. And an autopsy that was later conducted confirmed that the body had actually died of blunt force trauma to the head and not of being set on fire. They haven't identified who this body belongs to, so that still remains a mystery to this day. So yeah, the Department of Correctional Services then confirmed that Bester had actually escaped prison and he had not died in his cell. And this then led to a nationwide manhunt. The National Police Commissioner at the time stated that he had ordered the police to prioritize this investigation. At the same time, 3 employees were suspended and they were later dismissed relating to their conduct that on the evening of May 2022. Sorry for the little hiccup there, but the problem is here that I think it was the 3rd of May was when his body was discovered, but there's different news articles and some of them have the 22nd of May. So I don't know what's going on there with the media, but they should really have a meeting and figure out what these dates are. But I do believe the correct date is the 3rd of May. So yeah, these employees were dismissed because they had suspicious conduct on the evening of the 2nd of May, 3rd of May, whatever. So now we're going to talk about someone who is important later in this timeline. This name, I will warn you, is a struggle for me. But yes, so Dr. Nandifa Magudamana, I think I butchered that, but I'm going to refer to her as Dr. Nandifa, and if that's wrong, again, I apologize. So She approached the High Court in May of 2022 after it was reported that Bester had died in his cell. So she collected the body, which was found in his cell, and she took it to a morgue in Soweto. However, the body was obviously confiscated by police because they needed to conduct further investigations. This is when she then approached the court because she wanted the body back. She claimed that she was Bester's customary law wife, and she even produced the court with proof of the lobola negotiations between Bester and her father. However, when looking at the Home Affairs records, they found out that she was actually already in a civil marriage with another doctor. So South African law basically states that if you're in a civil marriage, you can't enter into a customary marriage. So that's the law currently. So because she was in a civil marriage to this other doctor, her marriage to Bester was void. Like, it was unlawful, not recognized by law. So yeah, so that obviously failed. In March of this year, a man was spotted in Johannesburg with Dr. Nandifa, who looked suspiciously like Thabo Bester, the Facebook rapist. A picture was taken, spread through social media, and this is when the frenzy ensued and when South Africa was propelled into the craziness that we're seeing at the moment. So that's why I wanted to mention Dr. Nandifa, because she comes up in the story quite frequently. So yeah. So now we're kind of going back to the prison, because we just saw he was found dead in his cell. People thought he died. Actually, he didn't. He actually escaped. So now we're going back in time, because after his escape, prison officers at this facility obviously started speaking to the media. So what some of these guards then revealed was that when Bester was at the facility, he knew that the guards were actually severely underpaid, and he would later use this information to help him escape. So allegedly, Bester planned his escape with the help of senior prison officials and management, who now blames junior prison officials for his escape. So they're just pointing fingers at each other at this point. Bester allegedly paid 5 million rand to at least 9 prison wardens to help him escape, which is crazy. And you'll find out in a second how he got the money. So the media spoke to one of the program supervision officers who worked at this prison. And this officer explained that on the night of his escape, staff brought something that looked like a TV stand into the facility. This stand was then later taken through a door, of which only the deputy director and the deputy operational managers were in charge after hours. And he says that he believes that is how the body was brought into Bester's cell, and that was also how the body left the cell, which is very, like, it feels like a movie at this point. Like, I don't know if I'm the only one, but it feels like a movie at this point. But anyways, moving on. The officers also explained that yes, the guards were underpaid, and that the prison building actually was not built according to South African standards of safety, and that the building was in fact unconstitutional. He explained that one guard was expected to look over like 60 prisoners. He also claimed that pregnant wardens were forced to guard dangerous criminals, which is just ridiculous. And he also said that 90% of the prisoners in this prison was gang members. And this is kind of what I'm gonna when I want to go back to the fact that this was a private prison, because I'm thinking that if you're going to have private prisons, I'd be more comfortable with it being for petty crimes than housing these dangerous criminals. I don't know if I'm the only one. I kind of feel iffy because I also acknowledge that our correctional services are in no means perfect and just as corrupt as this company clearly was, or the people working at this company clearly was. It's just a very, like, I feel uncomfortable about it, but yeah, let's just move on. So, like I said, this prison was ran by G4S. So, recently, the National Commissioner of Correctional Services stated that the prison had actually been taken over by the government, and currently there's like a temporary manager who's controlling the Mangahung prison. So they basically kicked G4S out. And they said that during an investigation conducted by the Department of Correctional Services, they found that Bester was assisted and that the facility's security system had been compromised, which, yeah, of course, one would think. The Department of Correctional Services has also spoken out and said that G4S is not cooperating with the investigation, which clearly, because they got 5 million. Yeah, there's clearly fraud, corruption, everything going on. I don't know why they refuse to cooperate, because one would think that if they want to maintain their innocence in the whole situation, they would work with the investigation. But like I said, 5 million, there's clearly some corruption going on. So maybe that's why they're just refusing to cooperate. But now, going back to Dr. Nandifa. So, after he escaped prison in May 2022, Bester was living with Dr. Nandifa, who's a celebrity doctor. And they were living in Stanton in a mansion, which reportedly cost them $40,000 a month. Now, like, as a law student, I know for a fact that that salary, that's crazy. Like, I'm not even gonna earn that salary, like, in my first 5 years of working. That's crazy. And to just spend that on rent, yeah, okay, must be nice. When the news broke that Bester had allegedly escaped prison, they fled the mansion. So, what I'm understanding is they only fled this mansion like recently, when that picture came to light on social media. So, when the whole country figured out that he was not in prison like we thought, that's when they ended up fleeing the Stanton mansion. So authorities raided the place, and they found that Bester had actually been living a very lavish life, which, of course, because they had money to pay 40,000 Rand a month for rent alone. Anyways, and they actually confiscated a watch worth 1.5 million Rand from this property, which is insane to me. But okay. 1.5 million on a watch? Wow, okay. Anyways, I think this just shows how much money this man was making or had whilst he was supposed to be in prison, and we'll see in a moment how he actually got all of that money. But yes, so during this period, so from the time that he escaped until the point where he fled his mansion recently, evidence came to light that Dr. Nandifa was involved in Bester's 21st century media scam, which was a scam he ran out of prison in 2018. Which, yeah, no words actually. So he basically scammed people by claiming that he was a chairperson of 21st Century Media, which was made to look like a subsidiary of the 21st Century Fox. So 21st Century Fox is like Warner Brothers, Disney, they're like movie production companies, whatever. And he ran this scam out of prison. Like, excuse me? That's crazy. Yes. So, moving right along, because, yeah, I have no words. So they found out that she was involved when they raided this house, and then shortly after, they fled. Clients of Dr. Ndifa arrived at her beauty clinic, and they found the doors locked and the telephones were disconnected. And this was also around the time where the Health Practice Council of South Africa came out and stated that Dr. Ndifa was practicing medicine illegally. So I don't know if it means that she was not a legit doctor, or if it means that she just didn't have the necessary paperwork or whatever in place to be practicing. But considering the scams and the fraud going on, I'm not surprised. So the two of them had actually been running another scam together. So it wasn't just the 21st Century Media scam that was going on, there was a whole other scam going on as well. And they were running a company called Arum Properties together. And during this scam, they convinced several people to pay millions of rands for construction projects, but never intended to actually deliver on any of this or go through with any of these contracts. So Arum Properties were registered as a company in 2017 while Bester was in prison. So he was running like not even one but two scams out of prison, but this is South Africa, so I probably should not be surprised. But still, that's crazy. Anyways, moving right along. I do want to mention that I also saw a claim in an article that when they looked up this company, they found that there was no registered company with the CIPC. So I don't know if the company was registered or if it wasn't registered. Maybe it was created in 2017. I'm not too sure. But yes, they ran this scheme, whatever you want to call it. So it also showed that payments were made from Arum Properties' bank account into Bester's account when he was in prison. And this came to light through records that were submitted to the Pretoria High Court. So a person told Ground Up, which is like a newspaper media reporting thing, that they were offered by Arum Properties to fly to Cape Town to take pictures posing in houses supposedly being renovated by Arum Properties, but the person passed on the opportunity after realizing that something was wrong. So yeah, always trust your gut feeling, my friends. Always trust your gut feelings, because I think had this person boarded that plane, yeah, no. But if you think that's bad, like, just listen to this next part. So apparently, they also used social media to approach models and people with a large social media following. So clearly he was going back to his roots. He was clearly resorting back to what he did in 2011, which further makes me call BS on his whole thing of like, oh, I didn't want to rape them, or oh, I didn't intend to do any of that. Like, my friend. But anyways, moving on. So, yeah, they approached these models and people with a large following on social media and told them to, or asked them to travel to Cape Town at their own expense. Our own properties were not paying for this, but to travel to Cape Town so that they could audition for a new Netflix show called Hot Property Chick. Which, I'm sorry, but if that name alone does not raise a red flag, then I don't know. Imagine opening Netflix and seeing a new series called Hot Property Chick. Like, okay. Yeah. Anyways, so in August of 2022, Aaron Properties hosted a Women in Property brunch in Hyde Park, and several Joburg businesswomen ended up attending this brunch. And at this brunch, they were offered services from Aaron Properties, which were quoted way below other companies in the industry for construction of luxury homes. And the reason I mention this is because they also kind of saw a red flag in the fact that they were quoted way below what other companies were charging in the industry of constructing luxury homes. And that also raised a red flag, and it was clear that they were just trying to get money out of these people, and they were never actually going to see their luxury homes. But anyways, so currently, if you're interested to look into this further, Fidelity Security Group is offering 100,000 Rand for the arrest of Thabo Bester. So the reason why they are now offering this award for the arrest is because this security group, and they said this themselves, said that they are serious about fighting crime with the same passion as the South African Police Service. Now, listen, if you're serious about fighting crime with the same passion as the South African Police Service, my friend, you're not very serious about fighting crime, and you're not very passionate about it. Because I don't know if you've ever dealt with the South African Police Service, but I have never detected seriousness or passion in any of my encounters. I have encountered audacity, yes, and just plain rudeness, but seriousness and passion, not two words I would associate with the South African Police Service. But yes, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. Anyways, so I just wanted to pop that in because I found that actually hilarious, that this security group decided to say this in front of the whole South Africa, kind of gaslighting us into thinking that our police service is better than it actually is, but okay. And also, it's not good for their business. You know, like, if you're serious and is passionate about crime, like the South African Police Service, like, that's not good for business. But anyways, let me get off this train. So if you're wondering what's currently happening, is there's evidence that suggests that Bester and Dr. Ndifo has actually escaped to Zimbabwe, and this evidence comes from the fact that Bester was involved in a gunfight with soldiers guarding the Beitbridge border, where they were eventually forced to ditch the car that they were in, and they had to run on foot. And apparently, through sources, I read somewhere that there's apparently a mole somewhere. Apparently their plan is to stay in Zimbabwe until the dust has settled, and then they will make their way back to South Africa. So apparently that's their current plan. also what's happening today on the 4th of April is the Parliament. So Parliament is currently being briefed by, I think, police, correctional services, whoever, and the Minister of Justice, all those people, about the current situation and what's going on. So that's the story so far. I will say that there is so much detail, there is so much depth to this story that I was unable to cover it without making this podcast like 2 hours long. So I did leave out some information. There was a whole appeal situation that happened after he was convicted of the rapes and robberies in Durban. So, and I didn't go into any of that, but I basically just highlighted, I think, the important things for you to kind of get a sense of like what's going on and what this whole story is about. If you want me to go into deeper detail or kind of like go into more detail about any of the things I mentioned, you can comment it or something, and maybe in the next episode or so I can cover a little bit of that. Yeah, I do understand that this is like a whole different direction than the other two episodes. But yeah, maybe this is something I can do. Like 1 week, I do like one of these types of episodes where I talk about something going on in the news, and the other week I talk about something else going on, or maybe like a combination of the two. I don't know yet. I'm kind of figuring things out at the moment. But yes, if you are still listening, thank you so much for sticking around. I hope you found some clarity in the whole situation about what's going on at the moment. Like I said, it's really difficult to get a complete timeline of what is actually going on because the media is just all over the place. And I just couldn't find an article that just puts out the whole timeline, you know? It's bits and pieces all over the place, and you kind of have to piece this whole puzzle together, which is really complex and really hard. So I did try my best. Um, yes, but thank you so much for watching. I apologize for the podcast coming out a bit later than normal or what was probably expected. But yes, I will chat to you guys next week. If you have any current cases or anything you want me to delve into, it doesn't really have to revolve around crime or anything like that. Any other news reports that you kind of want me to do a deep dive in, you can leave a comment, anything like that. I would appreciate it, and I'll try my best to look into it. Yeah, there's a lot of crazy news stories going on at the moment. Oscar was just denied parole for the second time. I'm not going to do the Oscar case. I feel like there's more than enough coverage on that. But yes, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you next week with a brand new podcast. Thank you so much. Bye, guys.